Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Michelle Seidler. I am the author of Psychic to Profit. I have been, along with Kelly Evelyn, going through the different chapters in my book. Actually, Kelly couldn't make it today, so I've decided I'm going to jump in and do this one on my own, which is really interesting because this chapter that I'm about to get into is, wow, it is probably it's profound in the transition of me moving out of mental institutions, working as a psychic, which that was the last video. This one's titled Chapter 3 and 4, Part 2. The previous one was Chapter 3 and 4 because we just didn't get through it all. And honestly, I don't feel like in that previous video that I did with Kelly, I feel like we still didn't get through a lot of things that I wanted to get into in terms of like my life as a psychic. And I'm not going to really do that in this video too much today. I'm going to move forward a little bit. However, I want to encourage you guys in watching that video or any other video for that matter. If you have any questions about working as a psychic or life as a psychic, I really want to encourage you, ask your questions in the comments because I will do a separate video at some point answering your questions and getting more into that. Also, as we go through more of the chapters and getting into some of the things that the Lord taught me about the prophetic, which is a few chapters away, I will actually reference some of that in there as well, the difference between a psychic and a prophet, because that was a big part of, something that I was really wrestling with and struggling with at that time. So a lot of those, kind of things are going to be weaved in and out. But again, on any of those videos that you want to ask any questions, please do that. It's a passion of mine to see people move into the purity of the prophetic. And I feel like a lot of times unintentionally, many in the church, even today, are moving in it looks very similar to what it looked like for me working as a psychic in the new and that. And we will get into talking more about that later on. In this video, we're going to start to move into what brought me out of that. And kind of before I do that, I want to just share a little bit about my mental state, my emotional and mental state at this time in my life. And there are some things that I did not actually write in the book. Well, I initially wrote them in the book and I had to take them out. I mean, when I wrote the book the first time, it was huge. It was way too big of a book. And so I had to cut many pieces of it out. And that really did incorporate a lot of things that were going on outside of kind of the psychic, new age, mental institution. So I will talk a little bit about that in this video because it's important. It's important to a lot of things that are going on in the church today. And so, yeah, if you have any questions about that too, please put them in the comments. I would say, even though I shared in one of the videos that when I stepped into the, working as a psychic or being introduced to that realm, I shared that it did something in my identity. It really settled something in me about who I was, more around being, that I wasn't crazy, but because of course, I really didn't know that there were that it was super common, like that people were like me, and I started to learn that. Never in a million years did I ever consider that it was in the church. And I kind of correlated it to witches that did that kind of stuff. And again, the timing of this was, we're talking early 90s. We didn't have internet information that was accessible as it is right now, with computers and all of that kind of stuff. And so that really did, when that happened, as I shared in the previous video, it settled something in my identity. Like, I'm not crazy. And to have people say that to me and say, no, this is a gift, you're not crazy. However, I would say that I still, through this whole time frame, I was really struggling a lot with depression. I did share, again, in one of the earlier videos, that I did come out of grew up in a really dysfunctional environment. And then, of course, going into mental institutions, like my family unit, I didn't really have one. My mom was doing her best, struggling. My dad was not around. And when I was younger, yeah, it was just some of those things I don't want to get into right now, for good reasons. There was just, let's just say, there was a lot of conflict between my parents. And so, which affected me. So I had those two I'm dealing with my own stuff about, my internal life, about what's going on, the spirit realm being more real to me, and then living in a dysfunctional environment. And that was all going on at the same time. So it was really a mess. And, um, so getting in, even into that room, I still carried that. I still carried this kind of depression at the time. So at the time when I started working, I would say, as a psychic, my daughter, I got pregnant. I didn't share that part. I did get pregnant in the midst of all of this when I was 18. And, so I'm a single mom as well in the midst of all of this. I mean, my daughter, we joke, but she kind of grew up with me in all of this. And so, here I am, single mom, trying to, depressed just because of everything that's going on with me internally, navigating life. And on top of that, I found myself in an extremely abusive relationship. And this, I vaguely mentioned this in the book. This relationship was off and on for 7 years. So he really was he was in the middle of kind of the beginning, the middle, the end of all of these phases in my life. And he was incredibly abusive. I wouldn't discover until many years later that, I'm not going to say he had NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, but he definitely was on the spectrum, on the high end of the spectrum, if he didn't actually have it. In the book, I shared that he actually went to jail for attempted murder, kidnapping and attempted murder in my life. I had left him, and he found out that I was seeing someone else, and he kind of tricked me into, I want to have a conversation. Can we have a conversation? I saw him out somewhere, and he's like, can we just get in my car and, go somewhere else and talk? And I said, okay. So I get in the car, and he basically gets on the highway and starts screaming at me, yelling at me. And he's actually telling me that he's going to take me somewhere and kill me. And as he's doing that, he's, hitting me. And of course, we're on the highway. We're going, 60, 65 miles an hour. There's nothing I wasn't going to open the door and try to get out of the car. And so he literally was hitting me as he's telling me this and driving down the road. So when we get to a particular exit, we were like in the middle of the lane, and he quickly moved into the exit ramp and was getting off of the highway. And apparently, another driver, another car that was either behind us or next to us, saw what he was doing and what was going on in the car and called 911. Thank God. And he was actually following us until my boyfriend had made a quick, switch over into the exit ramp, and the guy couldn't follow us. He lost us at that point. So he basically, when he called 911, he said they got off at this exit, basically. And so, wow, what a miracle that was, because we get off on this exit, and he's still really driving fast, and he's going to an area that was kind of remote, and still doing the same thing, hitting me. I'm going to kill you. And I'm saying to him, you if you kill me, like, people are gonna know, like, you're gonna get in trouble. Is this what you want with your life? And he's like, I'm gonna kill myself too. And we're kind of going back and forth this way, and he gets to a point where it was just a huge field. I mean, like, it was just endless of where it went into like the woods or whatever. And he slowed down enough to where I could open the door. I mean, this literally was something out of a movie. It was like ridiculous. And I fall out of the car, I jump out of the car, and I start to run. And of course, he stops the car and starts to chase me. Literally tore off my clothes. As he's trying to grab me, he catches me and gets me to the ground. Literally, at that moment, there were several police cars surrounding us and turned their lights on. This was at night. This was, I don't know, maybe 1 a.m. or something like that, 12 midnight, something like that. And they turned on their lights in the car and their sirens, and they had the little horn thing that they were speaking into and just saying, step away, let her go, that kind of thing. And of course he did. He was taken to jail. And that was an experience. He had, prior to that, been physically aggressive with me. And, it's interesting to think back now, like, what was my thinking that I would continue to stay in that and go back to that. And there's a lot I could say about that, but I do want to express this part, that because it's true for all of us. When we're younger, our perception of what love looks like is taught to us. It's modeled to us as we're children. Of course, we don't cognitively go, this is what love looks like, but it is subconsciously what's formed in us. And for me, for me, it was sort of like I had an understanding, or a subconscious understanding, that this was almost normal. Like, this is what this looks like, because that's what I grew up in. So he had never done anything to this extreme. And it really rattled me. It brought me into like a deeper depression, and I was although I was very numb. I was depressed, but I was really, really numb. Those of you who have been through any of that will know what I'm talking about. There's just kind of like this numbness that comes over you. And, he was calling me from jail, apologizing and then saying, please, take me back. If you don't, I'm going to kill myself. All that kind of stuff. And I eventually stopped taking his calls and had to go to court. At the time, unfortunately, wouldn't say unfortunately, but I dropped the charges because I felt bad for him and I believed that he would hurt himself. And unfortunately, that has always been a part of my nature. Always cared about people, and that it's just got used in a twisted way. I dropped the charges. However, the state would not drop the charges against him. So the state pressed charges against him and he went to jail. He was sentenced and went to jail. So, that was going on. I would say when that happened, it sort of triggered a series of events. It was kind of a turning point that started to move things fairly quickly in another direction. So I had that going on at the same time. So before this relationship, I was in another relationship that was another long-term relationship that I met right after my daughter was born. And he loved my daughter. My daughter loved him. I mean, that was like her daddy, and we were together for a few years. But we ended up breaking up. But when we broke up, we remained friends. We were really good friends, and he would still want to see my daughter. And there was a really good friendship we had. And I actually remember being on the last phone call that I had with him shortly after this abuse stuff happened and the other guy was in jail. And we were talking, and it was just, we were talking about random things about our life. He was in a relationship with another woman, and I remember the conversation was so strange. In that he was very nostalgic. I mean, we had conversations at different times about getting back together, and but this was kind of different. I mean, he was talking about the weirdest things like the birds and the trees, and he's just like, it had a different feeling to it. And I kept thinking to myself during the phone call, I was like, he's acting like I'm never going to see him again, or I'm never going to talk to him again. That's how it felt to me. And of course, obviously, that was my prophetic gift kicking in. And it was really heavy on me. And it was within a week later of that phone call with him, my mom had let me know that she got a phone call that he had been killed in a motorcycle accident. He loved motorcycles. He rode dirt bikes. And I mean, I remember the first time he got a motorcycle and thinking to myself, I mean, I would ride the dirt bikes with him. It wasn't so much the dirt bikes, it was his mode of transportation being a motorcycle. And I remember thinking, this is the beginning of the end. Like, I just knew it. I knew this would be the end of him. Because he was just very into extreme sports, and he was, a little bit wild with that stuff. And I didn't agree with the motorcycle, but it's his choice. And so he was on his way to work, actually not driving recklessly at all. And one morning on the way to work, and a truck came out and hit him. and he died instantly. And so that was, woo, very devastating for me. It sunk me. So it was like having, person that I really loved in my life killed such a young age, and then just coming out of, another guy that was in jail for, trying to kill me, kidnapping and attempted murder. It had me spiraling, and I was just done. I felt like my life was such a mess. I felt like I was a horrible mom, for many reasons. Let me count the reasons. And the only conclusion that I could come to about what I could do was to take my life. And so I did. I was at my mom's house, and she was on a lot of medication for some things that she was going through that she actually ended up passing away from. And I got into her medicine, and I took everything I could possibly take. And I was staying with her at the time because I just couldn't even do my life. I was such a wreck. And she found me, I guess it was several hours later, in my room, unresponsive. And so, of course, I don't remember any of that. I was completely out and was taken to the hospital, and the ER. I was admitted into the hospital, and I was unconscious for three to 4 days, 3.5 days. And so I kind of want to pause. Well, do I want to pause here or keep going? Let me say this. So so I'm getting better physically. Day 4, and they actually admit me after that into a psychiatric, evaluation kind of thing, what they do when you do stuff like that. And I was released from that. And I remember I got home. I was, again, staying with my mom. She was helping take care of my daughter. And I I remember feeling like um different. It's hard to explain, but I literally got on my knees and I said, "God, do something in my life. I just want to help people." And that was it. Well, I had shortly after that moved in. I mean, when I say shortly after that, it was a matter of weeks, I think. I had moved into my own apartment and was getting all set up. And I started remembering, like, I was having strange dreams of being in space and seeing the planets and floating around and seeing different colors. And they were like dreams I had never had before. They were very vivid, very real. And then I started to have what I call emotional memory of some things that had happened to me when I was unconscious in the hospital. And I'll say this, over the years, that grew and grew, like my memories of where I was and what happened to me when I was unconscious. I never had even to this day, I have not had a visual memory, except for, I believe, when I was having the dreams, I was either remembering or continuing what had happened to me when I was unconscious, because I vividly remember that time. It was like being in the constellations, being in all of the colors, and flying around and yeah, but the emotional memory part of it was this. When I say emotional memory, it's like remembering without seeing, but you feel it. I can remember how I felt when something was happening, but I can't see it visually. And I remember during that time having some kind of interaction that I believe was with God, and there was a agreement, a conversation that led to an agreement about my life. And I remember feeling a real, like a choice, that I had a choice, and that my daughter was a really big part of my decision making, and what the rest of my life would actually look like. And I remember feeling him. I remember feeling God, um, love. And and that, like I said, that would grow and grow. And then it would, over the years, grow more and more into the understanding of what that time, more of the fullness of what kind of came out of that time, or what it was supposed to look like. So I didn't remember any of that when I was on my knees actually and saying, God, like, help me. I just want to help people. I didn't remember any of it at that point. But what was really interesting during this time is I had the weirdest things happening. Like, I had literally knocking on my door. I had the Jehovah Witnesses knocking on my door. I had the Mormons knocking on my door. I had Christians knocking on my door. It literally was almost like this spirit realm. I was just like a a light attracting the all any kind of spirituality, that you could think of, literally at my front door. And I kept thinking, this is so weird. And even my daughter at the time, who would have been 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, something like that, um, was kind of like, what's going on? So that was another strange, aspect of things happening at that time. And so, um, I really didn't have any, like, direction. It didn't change, right away, any direction or anything that I was going to do with my life. I continued doing what I was, previously doing. And so I had scheduled to actually speak at a New Age conference. And so, when a New Age conference or a New Age event, if you had never been to one, it was sort of like, similar to the Christian ones, actually. Anyway, you'd have different speakers, but you actually then could have a booth. And I had a booth set up at this event where people could come meet with me and I would give them a reading. And so I did. I spoke at this event, and then I went back to my booth. And I remember, I'll never forget this man walking in my booth. He was very charismatic, very tall, light-skinned, African American man with bright green eyes. He was just very unique looking. He comes into my booth and he says, "You know, I listened to you. I watched you, and I just, want to let you know that I feel like you would have a lot to offer this private group that I lead." And you have to understand, like, I've went way past my time, but I'm gonna go a little longer. I had, oh, I forgot what I was saying. Dang it. A private group that he led. And you have to understand, at this time, I was so hungry. I always had a deep, like, longing and hunger for mystery. I was always seeking. I always wanted the truth. And so his secret group really appealed to that, mystery, investigative aspect to who I am. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. I go to this meeting, and basically he didn't tell me much about it, but I go to the first meeting, and it's basically a meeting centered around Kabbalah. Now, if you're not familiar with Kabbalah, Kabbalah is basically Jewish mysticism. So it would kind of, like, if you think of a way to compare it in the Christian realm, it would sort of be the mystical side of Christianity, which is my bent now anyway. And so, and he was teaching us out of the Bible, the Old Testament. He was teaching us a lot about, like, the tree of life, the what God is versus the who. Sort of like, God is yin and yang, God is this. Nothing of it was relational at all. But it was all around God. He began to teach, he taught us a lot about matter and how to move matter, how to manipulate matter, how to move objects. We literally would have, like, objects on a table and move them. And so this was the kind of things that he was teaching us. And I would say, I don't know, I hadn't been to that many meetings, and I started to get a really weird feeling about this guy because at night when I was sleeping, I could feel him. I could feel, like, I knew he was visiting me in the spirit. It was waking me up, and I was seeing him there, and it wasn't like sexual in nature in any way, but I felt like he was trying to take something from me. Like, it was almost like the gifting that he saw in me, or something that he saw in me that he wanted. And so I felt this sort of, like, thief kind of feeling with him. And so it started to bother me. And I had this thought, you know, and I always tell people, like, in this realm, there is so much deception. I mean, the blanket of deception is so thick that things that are now, like, obvious, to us, they weren't so obvious then, like, that something's right or wrong or good or bad. It wasn't like that. And so I had this thought to myself, is this guy good, or is he a bad guy? Like, I have this just thinking, is he a bad guy? Is something wrong? Like, this is not right. I mean, because again, here we are in the Bible too. So I didn't even, it kind of made me believe that he was even maybe more of a good guy. And I heard this voice say to me, ask him about Jesus. Now, you have to understand, not growing up in church, and I shared a little bit in one of the older videos about, my experience with my mom, my brief experience with my mom in a church. And my mom grew up Lutheran. It was a Lutheran church that we were in anyway. So when I hear this, my theology basically was my of what the voice that I was hearing was saying to me. If he says anything bad about Jesus, he's bad. Like, that was it, because that was my question. Is he a bad guy? Ask him about Jesus. If he says anything bad about Jesus, he's bad. Simple as it gets. And so I would say I had maybe been to like 9 or 10 of these meetings, not very many. I don't actually remember. And again, I had shared in my previous videos that my mouth has always gotten me in trouble. My gift is my mouth. And when I was younger, I didn't have much of a filtering system at all. And I had a love for truth. I definitely had a hunger and a love for truth. So I go into this meeting and I ask him, and there's like 12 of us in this group, and we're sitting around like that was like a conference table. And like I said, we had the Old Testament, we had the Bible, because for those of you that don't know, tarot cards are actually taken from the Bible. There are so many things in the New Age that are actually extracted from the Bible, the Old Testament mainly. And so they take things out of the old Bible and they twist it and they do different things with it. I won't get into that. That could be another video. I did share a little bit about that regarding astrology in the previous video. And so, again, sitting at this table, and I said, what about Jesus? Because here we are looking through, the Bible, and, the New Testament talks about Jesus. Like, what's the deal with him? And he says, Jesus never existed. These are stories referencing the New Testament. These are stories and examples for us to live by. And so I immediately was like, okay, he's bad. I mean, I trusted that voice that I heard, that voice that I now know is Holy Spirit. Okay. And I just believed him. So I literally stood up from that table and I said, "You're a liar." I think about it now today and I'm just like, well, I always made so much trouble everywhere I went. I said, "You're a liar." And I said to everyone in the group, I said, "You guys need to not listen to him. He's a liar." And I said, "I don't want to have anything to do with you." And I said a few other things. And I turned around and I walked out. I got to my car. By the time I got to my car, I had a very high fever. I was clearly getting sick, and I felt like I was, how like sometimes when you get you get a really, really high fever, it's almost like your mind isn't right either. You just have that fever feeling. And so I mean, it was literally by the time I left that room and got to my car, I was feeling it. I get home and I was so I don't know. I mean, like, if there was a time I thought I was crazy, all through the years when I would ask the question, like, am I crazy? Am I crazy? If there was ever a time where I really, really believed it, this was it. That's how I felt. I felt so much. I mean, the best way I can explain it is warfare. I mean, it was clashing and just intense stuff going on. and I'll share that other part afterwards. And this actually drove me, not knowing what to do about how I was feeling. It literally drove me into my closet. I went into my closet and I could feel literally angels, demons. Like now I go, there was a war over my soul, or a war over me, or who I am, or what I was going to choose. Or it was just like that light and that dark that was clashing. And I literally got on my knees, and I was already on my knees, and I was like, God, if you're real, come and help me. Like, I need help. Um, now pause for a minute. If I didn't say this in any of the previous videos, I want to make sure I say it. Growing up, my mom taught us that hell did not exist. Demons weren't real, hell did not exist, like that was what we were always taught. And so I had no grid for what I'm about to tell you that happened. Out of my mouth, out of my mouth in my closet, I basically started renouncing the devil. I was saying things like, I hate you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I mean, it was just like I went on and on, cutting off in my way, in my own way, obviously led by the Holy Spirit, cutting off any kind of agreement with Satan, darkness, hell. And I was using the word devil, I was using the word Satan, which I was taught didn't exist. So, and when I was going through this, it was like, and I explain this to people, it was almost like it was flowing out of me and bypassing my understanding. Like, I wasn't thinking like, okay, now I need to renounce this, I need to renounce that. It was literally just like a flow of the Holy Spirit, of things just sort of taking over me in a way, saying things that I had no grid for. And that happens, and I finish that, I get done with that, and I really wish I had taken a picture or could remember it to this day. It's one of those things where I'm like, I really wish I would have had some kind of evidence, not for other people necessarily, but for me to be able to look it up or research it or whatever. But I literally had marks come on my body. I had on my hand, I had a symbol that manifested on my hand that looks like some kind of hieroglyphic symbol, that freaked me out. I mean, I'm looking at it like, what is that? What is that? And because I had kind of come out of my closet after that, and literally then went right back into my closet, and things started coming out of my mouth again that bypassing my mind, bypassing my understanding. I was like talking about, my gosh, I skipped a part. Whoa, I skipped the most important part. After that happened, sorry, let me back up. Right, the renouncing the devil. I literally saw, and people question me about this all the time. It is the honest to God's truth. I literally saw in the spirit, I saw a dove come above me and enter into my body through my head and come into my body. And when that happened, things started coming out of my mouth, things I had no grid for. I was talking about love, forgiveness, peace, like just constant flow of different kind of like revelations and truths and things like that I had no understanding about. And I was writing it down. And even to this day, I'm like, where's that notebook? Oh, some of those things are so frustrating. But I'm writing all of these things down, and then it ends, and I get up, I open my front door to my apartment, and I felt like a completely different person. Like, I remember saying, my gosh, the grass is so much greener. The sky is bluer. I felt so much lighter, like, it was just a completely new person. And there are so many things I left out of this. Because even prior to some of these things happening, like that last day before the Kabbalah meeting, I literally remember sitting on my porch. It's so many weird things happen. I was sitting on my porch, like at the little, like I had a step down kind of thing, and I was sitting on that, and I remember looking over to the side of me, and it was like I saw myself leave my body. It was like I got out of me and was like sitting next to me, and I was saying goodbye to myself. And I remember going, this is so weird. What's happening? Like, it was very, very real. And like, and again, all of these things you have to remember were happening kind of all mixed in together. That's why sometimes I get even my timing, like, of things happening, because it was all within this, me attempting suicide, all the way to, through the Kabbalah stuff, all the way to what I getting baptized in the Holy Spirit, which is what happened to me. In that space of time, so many bizarre, supernatural, strange things were happening. And I remember even talking about doves all the time. And I didn't never related the dove to anything Christian. Like, I had no grid. And I was saying things that I was just different and changing. And it was just a supernatural time. And so all of this happens, and this video is so long, you guys. I should have made this into 2, but I'm going to finish out this part because it kind of goes on more into this season of things that were going on. So after I go outside and I see, like, I'm like, everything's brighter and I feel lighter, and I sit down at my little table that I had, and I start to hear that voice again, that same voice that told me, ask him about Jesus, the Kabbalah guy. I hear that voice again, and he's literally giving me a list of things that I need to do, certain people I needed to forgive. There was, I didn't even get into this. There was a warrant out for my arrest at the time, because again, I was just rebellious and running from the police. And I think I talked more about it in the book. I won't get into it now. There was a warrant out for my arrest, and he told me to turn myself in. And then he said, there were a number of other things. And then he said, he showed me a vision and then told me what to do. So I have this vision of me walking down the street and going into this store. So he tells me, I want you to walk here. I want you to walk here to this store. I didn't even know what store it was. I just knew, like, it was in this shopping center. So I did not knowing where I was going. I just walked down the street. I crossed the street into the shopping center, and I go into this store, which happened to be a used bookstore. And he's showing me again, I'm just following what I'm seeing in my in this vision. And he leads me to the back of the back in the corner of this used bookstore and this top shelf. So I go reach up to that top shelf and I pull out this book, and it's a used Bible. And next to it, or a few books down from it, there was another book called something Holy Spirit. I should remember. And I got that one too. So I buy I buy the Bible, and I buy, this book, and I got home and I sit down and I open the Bible into the New Testament. Because, by the way, when we were studying Kabbalah out of the Bible, I didn't have my own Bible. It was he was, doing it. So this was like my first Bible. And I open it up into the New Testament, and I saw things in the Bible, the book of John, actually. I saw things in the Bible that I had written, or the things that I had said out of my mouth that I wrote down when the Holy Spirit came into me. So he basically came into me, and I'm writing all these things down. Those things were in the Bible. And I heard that voice say to me, I'm the God of this Bible, follow me. And that was it for me. Like, okay, I know who this is now. I know who this voice is. You're the God of this word, of this Bible. I literally, it turned my life around. Like every single thing, every book, I burned. I either burned it, I cut it up, I threw it away. Anything I had related to darkness or the New Age was out of my house. I cut off every single relationship in my life except for one who wasn't even into that realm at all. She had known me prior to that realm. And she'll probably love watching this video, because she kind of was part of some of this. Anyway, I cut all of that off, and my next step was to do the other things that he said, like forgive these people. So I, wrote letters, asking people for forgiveness, and then forgiving people. And then I wrote a letter to the judge pleading for mercy for, the warrant that was out for my arrest, because it was literally going to put me away for a few months, 6 months. And I wrote him a letter explaining everything that was going on. And basically, long story short, I got a response back that I had to, I guess I forgot some of the details, but anyway, I ended up having to do just 30 days in jail. And so my friend that I'm talking about that I didn't cut off the relationship with actually really helped me with my daughter, along with my mom. And I turned myself in, and I went to jail for 30 days. And all I did while I was in jail was read my Bible. It was almost like the kind of a gift from the Lord, as weird as that sounds, because that's literally all I did was devour the Bible. I remember people saying to me, because I was lit up, like I was high, on the Holy Spirit with all of these things happening to me. And I remember people saying to me in the jail, like, what are you doing here? Like, you don't belong here. What did you do? And I wasn't, and I was happy. I wasn't miserable. It was so interesting. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this video because I've went way too long at this point. And I know there's some stuff I left out, but I will pick it back up in the next video that I'm doing. And again, reminder, if you guys have any questions about any of this, please write your questions in the comments and I will answer them to the best that I can. And then I look forward to the next video. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. Bye.